Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the YGC 10 Explore series. So today we are running the third session on this YGC 10 Explore webinar series. So the intention of this webinar is to give you an insight and different opportunities that are available in different fields so that you could pick on some problem and solve it during as your startup or during the next couple of years. So today we have Travis Ratnam, CEO of Knowledge Hook, who's here to share and discuss some problems that would be there in the edtech space and give you some ideas what you could take on and work. So Travis, over to you.
Thank you, Aparna, for having me today. It's a pleasure and an honor to participate with YGC. You guys are doing incredible work, and I'm always inspired by meeting other entrepreneurs who are just beginning their journey. And one little secret or probably not well-known thing, in fact, I was just sharing this with a friend of mine yesterday, that the way entrepreneurs, perhaps folks who've have gone through the journey of building something from nothing, they essentially think, to use an analogy of a musician playing music. Some of us have been, are further along in the music sheets and are playing the notes that are further along in the song. Some of us are just beginning the music sheets, and some of us are at the end of the song in their journey. And it is not so much where you are in the notes, where you are in the song, whether you are halfway through the song or just beginning or near the end, but it's how you play the song that keeps us going. And if you can tell, no matter where you are on the journey, whether an entrepreneur is honoring the music truly the way they should, whether they're truly passionate about what they're doing, it all comes down to how they're playing the song. And just like the analogy, people who enjoy music, that they're not focused on where you are in the song, they are enjoying the music. And so if you truly enjoy what you do, you have as much in common with anyone else along their journey versus someone who's not necessarily enjoying playing the song. And so at the end of the day, it's about the process and not the outcome. If you honor the proper process and the right reasons for doing something, you have a very high chance of achieving those outcomes. That's not just with entrepreneurship, that's with everything in life, I believe. Today, I was invited to speak about problems in the education landscape that might lend itself to opportunities. And so I thought about that for a little while. I thought about what that could, just gonna put the fan on here. I thought about what that could potentially, what are some of those problems? And I realized as I was preparing for this particular talk that, it might not necessarily be the best thing to simply list out a set of problems that I personally, I, Travis, living in Canada, see as opportunities in edtech that someone else halfway across the world might want to pursue. And the reason for this is the problems that I see might be mostly relevant to the markets that I live in or can relate to. And as many of you are entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, the market is very different. And while there may be similarities to the problems that edtech can solve here and the problems that edtech can solve in the East, there are other differences that someone like me may not truly appreciate that are prevalent in the East that might make the edtech solutions very, very different out there. And in turn, entrepreneurs who are closer to the problem of their market would be in a much better position to understand and build the right business models for. And this is not just for education, this is for all companies in all markets and industries. And I'll give you an analogy, but I don't even know if this analogy applies back home as much as it does here. When you turn 16, you're eligible to drive a car. So most 16-year-olds begin that process, get a license, and start to begin the process of learning to drive a car for the first time. And once they've accomplished that, and let's say they have parents in the back seat, parents, because it's their child, are always worried, and their child is driving for the first time, start to look over the shoulders and tell the 16-year-old, watch out, look out for this, turn left, turn right, do this, do that. And the funny thing is, no matter how old you get, your parents, if they're in the back seat, they continue doing that because they're your parents. And this is relevant here because advisors might, who have well-intentioned, want to help you, and they might tell you turn left, turn right. And we might be right, but we also might be wrong. But at the end of the day, the driver in the front has the closest handle of what's happening in front of them. The rest of us are backseat drivers. And so I have lots of mentors and advisors, and there's an extremely, it's extremely valuable in many ways. But it is up to the entrepreneur to know how to make use of your advisors and mentors in a way that is useful to you. But when it comes to what your idea should be, when it comes to how you choose to finally execute your ideas, that has to come from you. You have to be accountable for your ideas and your decisions. You have to be accountable for the type of things you want to pursue based on the things you see in front of you with the customers you're looking at. Someone else cannot generate those ideas for you. And more importantly, you will not be passionate to pursue ideas that you hear from me or anyone else on a call. And so this is a very important thing, and is a very important as an entrepreneur playing the music notes for the first time and you're just getting started. If you are executing someone else's idea that you heard, the way you play those notes, people will notice. You're not in love with the music, right? So a musician who's further along in their journey playing, the second page or the fourth page of the song, will notice, oh, that musician doesn't really like the song. Because when I played it, I knew exactly how passionate I was about the problem. I may not have had the exact solution, but you could see the dance, and the dance is very in line with someone who's honoring the song. And so that is very important for an entrepreneur. It has to come from you. You have to feel passionate. That being said, I don't, I do think that there's a lot of things I can share today that might be not only applicable in education, but applicable across entrepreneurs, no matter what your industry is. And I will touch on some of these things, in education. I will make some time for that. But I want to, again, just emphasize that, I'm speaking from my perspective, which is constrained by my geography and my visibility into the customers in the markets that I'm in. A lot of what I see will not necessarily apply to what you guys are seeing, or it will require you to really adjust and adapt differently for your markets. And so I'll walk on 3 different tools, and then I'll use examples across industry and education to explain the value of these tools. And this will hopefully, with these tools, you will walk away with a better understanding of how to identify a good quality problem, how to attack or execute solutions that might solve that problem and create a potential solution, and then how to ensure that as you scale, you have a strong competitive advantage in your market. And then maybe we could open to the QA. And before I jump right in, I know that was a mouthful, Arvena, how much time should we leave for Q&A? What point do you think we should, 15 minutes? What's
Yeah,
the,
15, yeah,
it's
15
around
minutes.
8:45?
Yes,
I'm on
yes.
Eastern Standard Time. Okay, perfect. So, so there are three things I thought of that would be useful for an entrepreneur who, whether it's in ed tech or not. In fact, before I do start that, these three things are relevant to all, not just education, but all companies. And I think this is important for folks in ed tech to understand this. I personally, obviously, a lot of people who are pursuing solutions or markets in education are also looking at the social impact and the value that it could do for society, because education has that unique element that is, it's more visceral, it's more obvious, it's less abstract. You understand that you're making a positive impact. I believe a lot of companies, no matter what industry or what company, is providing incredible utility for society in order for it to do well, and thereby implying creating great positive impact. But for folks in education entrepreneurs, it's a lot more obvious and visceral. And this is good, this is great, but you also could get confused because it's such a relatively, the nobility of the cause is relatively obvious, the value of the cause, the social value. You might get lost as to what you're doing sometimes. And it's, you know, something I was very fortunate not to make this mistake, but I've read, since then, I've read a lot of interesting companies that were attempted and failed. And one of the reasons for edtech companies to fail is folks who confuse the social impact with the for-profit aspect of the company. And what I mean by this is, if you've decided to build a for-profit company, but you're operating like a not-for-profit because you're focused on purely the altruistic aspects of building an education company, you're probably making a mistake. If you have a very altruistic bent, which is, I personally feel like I do, and I share that very strongly, meaning you want to make a positive impact and that's motivating you. That is literally what is motivating me too. But if you decide that you're going to do it in a for-profit way, you have to play by the rules of a for-profit company. So you genuinely have to decide before you pursue this journey, are you building a not-for-profit like a Khan Academy, or are you building a for-profit? And the reason why I chose personally to build a for-profit was before Knowledge Hook and before my decision to pursue a company, I had done not-for-profits. And I personally had felt that what I was good at doing, what I was capable of doing, and what inspired me was how to scale my impact in a sustainable and effective way, how to leave something behind that I felt truly made an impact. And for me personally, this doesn't mean, it does not mean that not-for-profits are not a very valuable, scalable way to make impact, because they are too. But for me personally, I discovered that I was made to build a for-profit. And I realized there were many great examples throughout human history of for-profits. In fact, there's just far more examples, I would argue, of how you can make a genuine impact in society. And a great example, in fact, is our smartphones, right? This phone, right, launched in, I think, roughly around 2010, this device. Now, if you were born during this era, the single most important thing of our time, our generation, that all people should own, because everything else you can rent, a home, a car you can rent. But the thing you need to own to be a productive member of society is some little computer in your pocket, right? The ideally. And this thing here, the one that the farmer is using to manage his or her crop yield in India, and the one that the richest man in the world is using is roughly the same device. The richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, their phone is either an Android or an iPhone. And they're not, just because they have all that extra wealth, they they can't buy a $3 million or $10 million smartphone. There's no such thing. There's only the same phone and the capabilities of that phone are virtually, the same, right? There might be extra storage and things like that, but mostly the same for the farmer in India managing crop yield. And so this is what I mean by social impact. And so when you pick up the instrument of for-profit, you have to truly believe in some of the ways in which it can make a useful impact for society. And then you have to decide, okay, I think that the way I can make a social impact as an education entrepreneur using a for-profit is real. And there are many examples throughout history like this one, where I can actually do something like that. And therefore, I'm going to now learn everything any entrepreneur who starts any company has to learn to identify and measure the problems I'm seeing and decide which solution or what opportunity I should pursue. And the way I go about executing it, I have to think like a company, not a not-for-profit or a charity. My son's just walked in. Just give me one sec. Hello, Nico.
Hello.
Sent you a text. I'm actually volunteering.
I asked
I'm on a live stream. I'll finish. I'm on ready to go after this. Yeah. You want to come say hi? Nico, you want to come say hi? Sorry, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, I'll see you soon. So it's my 3-year-old. He just woke up. So coming back to this point. So one of the big mistakes that education technology or education entrepreneurs make is they start building a company, but they think in a non-company way. They think the rules don't apply necessarily, or they forget the rules because they're focused on the social thing. So the way you have to execute this, you have to understand and believe in the incredible power that a for-profit can do in terms of its impact, positive impact for society. And then you play within those rules. Because if you pick one instrument, whether it's a violin or a guitar, once you pick that, you can't start to, pick up a violin and try to play the guitar. You have to play the violin. If you play the guitar, you have to play the guitar. And for-profit, not for profit. And so pick your instrument. If you've decided it's a for-profit, then let's, a lot of what we're going to talk about is very relevant. And genuinely, like the smartphone, these things, entrepreneurship and for-profit models can have an incredible impact on society, positive impact, if done well. And so, this is what the talk is going to cover. So there are 3 things, get right to it, that a good entrepreneur should be thinking about. The first one is how to identify a quality problem. Okay. And for that, there's a very simple way to look at your landscape with your customers. The truth is, and I'll actually list out 2 different concepts that might be useful for you guys. You're going to have to look it up yourselves, but I'll spell the name of the concepts and I'll give you an example, and then hopefully you guys, if you found this useful, you could look it up. Let me just write this down so I won't forget. Okay, so the 2 concepts are it's called the FOGG, F-O-G-G, FOGG, behavioral model. And the second one I'm going to talk about is the peak end rule. I'll explain what that is in a second. And these are different ways to look at a customer's journey, look at the way a customer feels a pain point and the work that they're willing to put in to address that pain point that help you classify the quality of the problems you are pursuing. So this is not about the solution you're trying to build or the opportunity, but how to look at the customers who are trying to, in this case, education, so struggling to learn something, and classify the quality of that struggle in terms of pain and threshold and sensitivity to that pain, allowing you to then say, wow, that is a good opportunity to pursue an entrepreneurial idea. So, and this is really important. And obviously one of the most popular examples today in modern time, outside of education, is Elon Musk and the companies that he's been executing. And if you look at the way he goes about doing this, I'll use two examples. The first one is the pain point of cars and electric transportation. Very obvious one. Most of you may already know this, but let's go over it. The way that he has launched each of the cars for Tesla, he started off with the high-end model. And this is a very important thing to think about as an entrepreneur. He looked at, and his vision and their vision was to accelerate the use of electric cars mass market. So obviously he is working his way to a cheaper, more affordable, more accessible car. That's always been part of the vision. But instead of directly diving right into that, he realized that you need charging stations all over the world at easy access. So if you're driving anywhere and your battery dies, you need a charging station. You need all this other stuff. You need to be able to manufacture batteries and electric engines at scale. And so you need to, manufacture, in the first time you do this, your cars are going to be very expensive coming out of the assembly line. And until you hit high volume, you won't get that price point that's affordable for everyone. You need to make cars extremely attractive and sexy in terms of visual appeal and coolness and all that stuff. But unfortunately, electric cars for the masses may not have that immediate appeal. In fact, it's the high-end cars that might have a better opportunity of that. So when you step back and look at the things you need to do to accomplish, and you look at the different types of people who buy cars, he felt that the first person he should target are folks who are interested in high-end cars, extremely, extremely high-end cars, the luxury car market, not even the the BMW market, but a tier above that. And very obviously, this makes sense because those guys buy those cars like they're collecting, art or something. They're not using it to go to work every day necessarily. So the charging stations is not a problem. They're just, here's another interesting car to have in my collection. So they're not price sensitive. So you could charge a ton. And, they don't seem to care because it's not about the price. It's about the novelty of the car. Other features that may be interesting. So it's more a toy than it is a useful working tool for them. All these factors, and of course, because they are looking for the cool factor, the it factor of the car, the design, the sleek, the novelty of the features, that type of car could then create a brand image that will spoil over into the other cars that Tesla builds. So this is the entrepreneur essentially looking at the landscape and identifying the different people who might buy a car, an electric car, and analyzing, the pain point and the sensitivity to the pain points, across those customer segments, and saying, this group is the one I should pursue first. And so a tool that could help you is the FOG behavioral model. It's just a simple chart that shows you how to think about a customer's pain point, and it's their relationship to act on their pain point, the amount of energy they'll invest to want to address their pain point. That's all it is. It's a simple visual to help you look at that and think about, oh yeah, that's right. Not every problem I have will I want to spend the same amount of energy and effort to solve. And a good entrepreneur understands that before you jump right in and solve every problem you see, you should think about that. What are the most sensitive problems in education for the market you are pursuing, the people you are targeting? What are the most sensitive problems? That's the FOG behavioral model. It's part of the first section I want to talk about. The peak end rule is also part of that first topic I want to cover. The peak end rule, so peak, P-E-A-K, dash end, E-N-D. The peak end rule is this concept that when you experience something, when you pick up an iPhone, or let's say you vacuum cleaner, you pick up a vacuum cleaner and you use the vacuum cleaner to clean your living room, and you plug it, put it away back in the closet, that whole experience from taking it out of the closet, using it, putting it back in, that's an experience. And throughout the experience of that product, you will have emotional highs and emotional lows. You will have, oh, this is a great experience. This is great. I love this product. And you will have emotional lows. Oh, this is frustrating. I hate this aspect of using this product. At the end of your experience, when you reflect back of the vacuum cleaner, what will drive your impression of that product are the moments where the emotion was at its peak. So peak at the high points and the peak at the low points. In fact, if you guys are all familiar with, potentially you're familiar with the vacuum cleaner called Dyson. And Dyson is a powerful, piece of engineering. It's an engineering marvel for vacuum cleaners. The founder is absolutely a strong innovator in that field. And when Dyson first started, this founder had built a motor so strong and so efficient that all the vacuum cleaners in the market, for quite frankly, could not compete with the quality of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. So Dyson had the best suction. But the problem at the time for Mr. Dyson was that all the commercials for all the other vacuum cleaners all said, hey, we have the best suction. And if you're old enough like me to remember, they would show examples of carpets, and at least in growing up here in Canada, and but probably everywhere, where they would show the mud or the dirt on the carpet, and then they would show the vacuum cleaner going over and cleaning it. And oh, we have the best suction. So every vacuum cleaner used some commercial like that. So Dyson's scratching his head. Oh my gosh, I have the best vacuum cleaner. People care about this. This is not true. The carpet doesn't get that clean the way they're saying it is. That's fake advertising. But he didn't know how to get everybody's attention. Because if he said I had the best suction, that is no different from what they're saying. So he's stuck. He's struggling. So luckily, with his team, his senior team, he had someone on his team who essentially did a user study with all the folks who used the vacuum cleaner. So she had a usability study, and she put them in a room and asked them, so what's your experience with the vacuum cleaner? And she's referring to the old vacuum cleaners, not the Dyson. And she was writing down all the notes. And as she was writing all the notes, she noticed something. She noticed that just like the peak end rule, there was a moment in their experience with vacuum cleaners that everyone got very emotional and angry with the old vacuum cleaners. So what was that moment? And so this will hopefully ring a bell for some of you who've used vacuum cleaners from that period. The vacuum cleaner bag. And the bag, every vacuum cleaner back then, when you bought them, they made you buy these bags that you have to put inside the vacuum cleaner. And they might still exist today in various markets. Again, see, this is where I wouldn't know as much as I know my market. But those bags, everyone hated for many reasons. One, they get you with the bags because you're constantly paying money back to the vacuum cleaner companies. And that's probably why they have it, is one of the reasons they believe this whole business model existed this way. But also, it was a messy experience. Excuse me. Nobody was looking forward to these bags. The vacuum cleaner, as soon as the bag is full, all this dust is kicking out, and you're like, oh no, I gotta change the bag, otherwise all the dirt's gonna come back out. You open this out, the dust is coming out, you throw it away, you put another one, you have to go to the store, oh no, we're out of bags. This experience was entirely, just not something that people appreciated. So when you think about them describing, okay, I take the vacuum, I buy the vacuum cleaner, take it out, I use it. Yeah, I love this experience. I love these features. Oh, I hate the bag. I hate the bag. Everyone was saying I hate the bag. So this is really powerful. So this marketing leader took this back to Dyson and said, we need to hone in on this difference. We need to create an ad that basically explains, something that makes Dyson different. And why isn't Dyson using a bag? And in fact, because Dyson is not using a bag, the suction is even stronger with the Dyson, because when you pass the air through a bag, it slows down the suction. And so they decided to create an ad, and you can look this on YouTube. It's called Dyson Vacuum Bag. You just Google that on YouTube and you'll see the video. It's a perfect ad. And it actually helped them take off. And they focused on the bag. And you can hear the music and you can hear the voice of the narrator. And they're like, oh, the vacuum cleaner bag. We all hate the vacuum cleaner bag. Everyone watching this, their emotion is going up because they all have this experience. And they're saying this bag is preventing the air from coming out. And you could see the dust and describing it all. And then say, this is why we invented the Dyson. No bag, better suction, better airflow, right? And then they showed a Dyson and showed perfect airflow. And that really helped. It helped Dyson set them apart from the rest of the market. Again, this is because the problem of the bag, the pain point, the sensitivity of people who had to deal with the bag, made that specific, unique feature that Dyson pursued, and it gave it an advantage, right? And so it doesn't have to be a whole new market like electric cars, like Tesla. It could be an existing market, but the way you identify opportunities, you notice this pain point over here is so strong and the main competitor is not paying attention to this. So this makes for a quality business, at least to get started, for your first set of customers. And now you've planted your flag and you can grow from there. And so this is the first thing I want to talk about. It is really important as an entrepreneur, when you look at these problems, the quality of the problem, right? And so the FOG behavioral model, the peak annual, all just simple tools. They're not complicated. Look at them, learn them, and try to think about them as you're looking at your customers. In education, whether it's higher ed or lower ed, maybe you're focused on kids who are at risk. Maybe you're focused at teachers who are at risk. Maybe you're focused on public schools versus private schools. Maybe you're focused on tutoring after school or during school. Maybe you're focused in higher ed and not necessarily those who are going to university. Maybe those who didn't go to university. Maybe those who decided not to go to university. Maybe those who couldn't afford to go to university. Whatever you're focused on, look at that journey. Look at the type of pain and experiences, negative emotions, positive emotions too. And then use that to help you guide and qualify the different types of potential solutions and problems. And that is a very important tool. I hope that's helpful. The second one and the third one were at 5 minutes. They won't take as long. The first one was the most important. The second one is, I would say, the best analogy is a bowling ball alley. So a bowling alley, when you're playing bowling and the pins, down that you're about to hit, they're organized in these, sequence, right? So what's the best way to, let me draw this out for you guys so you can see on my screen like this. This is how, when you're playing bowling, this is how they look. So the second one, I think I'm told that I can keep going a little past the 5-minute mark, so I will. So this bowling ball analogy. So it's really important to use this analogy when you think about how you grow your vision for a business. One of the best ways to, as an entrepreneur, to build a solution is not just build a solution for a problem that has a strong pain point for a customer, but the group of people that have that serious problem or that pain point is not the entire market, right? Everybody wants a smartphone. That's a big market at this point, right? And there's already big companies that have captured that market, right? Too big, right? But so just like that in education technology or in larger markets, you want smaller customer bases. And why is this important? When you're first starting off, if you're tackling a problem that is so strong that the entire market feels this strongly about the problem, you're probably sitting in a market that has a lot of competitors. And that's fine. Most markets and I say this with, this can easily get misinterpreted. Ultimately, you do want to target a big market. You do want to pursue a larger market. But what you need to do, it's called the beachhead strategy, is that you need to, and you can look this up, beachhead strategy. You need to concentrate all your energy into one small group and solve their problem in a way that it's too small a market for any big company to try to tackle, because they have the resources and the money to solve the larger problem. So the Ford, Tesla is a great example again, right? Let's look at Tesla. They're competing with the entire auto industry. Everybody wants to travel. Everyone wants an automobile. So that's a big market. But by Tesla targeting that high-end luxury car market, those guys, they're not sitting there saying, oh, I just want one car. I'm either going to pick a Ford or a Lamborghini or a Bugatti or whatever those luxury cars are. They're also thinking about, I want a collection of cars. And that's not me. I'm not interested in that stuff. But nevertheless, like, it's a market, and it's a market that Tesla could target, and without feeling the weight of these larger car companies competing directly with them. So Tesla now can add features and create a unique electric car for the high-end luxury market that anyone who's a car collector could then, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, I'll buy that too, right? And there's and they can add features that a large car company like a GM or Ford, that's great, good for Tesla. I'm the big Toyotas and the GMs and the Fords of the world, they don't care, because that's not affecting them. You want that when you're starting off, especially if it's a new category. Even if it's not within a category, even if you're a Dyson competing with existing vacuum cleaners, you want to target a smaller group of people who care about this, in the case of vacuum cleaners, suction, who care about that pain point more than everyone else. Oh, I hate the vacuum cleaner. And maybe not everyone hates it the same way. So you want to target the ones who hate it the most. And that smaller group will be your beachhead. It's your entry into the market. It's the first basically bowling pin you're hitting. It's small. Then from there, you can expand to the other customers. And without that, smaller group that's so unattractive for the big players in the industry to focus on, because it's not, the ROI is not there, the return on investment for them. They have the resources to pursue something that's more bland, more generic, that targets the larger group. They don't care about that niche. So you want that. That's a very important part of getting started. There's different ways that people estimate this. Okay, for me in Ontario, let's say it was like roughly a $10 million market for a very specific district group or this or that. And from there, we targeted, a very specific problem, and we came at the problem in such a unique way that no one in the market was serving, and the other alternatives were trying to capture that market and parents and tutoring using the same product. And so we had specialized, understanding the specific pain points of this group, and said, we're not going to create a solution that serves all the markets, but we're going to serve this market. And then from there, we're going to create another product for tutoring, another product for parents. And we understood those also had smaller groups. And we would specialize and build it for a small group. This has been a very important part of any good business. In my opinion, some of the great brands, this is the strategy they use. I use another Elon Musk example, which is so different from cars, right? A Neuralink. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the computer chip that he's now building, that we would one day potentially plant in our heads to basically control our devices. So we don't have to touch the phone, but we can think through and communicate through our mind. Sounds like a really cool idea for all of us, but I certainly won't be the first, and I imagine you wouldn't be the first to put that chip in your head. But Elon Musk has identified a group of people who have become paralyzed through accidents and other forms, who are essentially paraplegic, I believe is the word, and cannot move. And if you look at that smaller group, if you look at the pain and the frustration around essentially communicating, through they use eye tracking tools where their eyes would look at, as part of a screen, and that would determine the letter that they want you to press, or they'll have like just their finger, is touching something. It takes a long time for them to communicate a thought or a phrase. The famous one example, Stephen Hawking, and the tools that Stephen Hawking uses to essentially communicate that. Ultimately, the pain points, so apply the fog model, apply the peak and roll, their experience for those who are paralyzed and the tools that they have available to them, very frustrating. And the pain point and what they're willing to do to solve that pain point, if it's way more better experience, very, very great market who would be more willing to, if Elon can solve this problem where you can type faster, using a Neuralink, then you could type with your finger. If he solves it for them first, and imagine those folks who are paralyzed, who now can type faster, as fast as they can think, they can type. Imagine that, as fast as you can think, you can type. And they're the first to benefit from that. And even if you don't get to that speed, they're the ones who are more willing to get anything, and that is better than what their current solution is. That is a great market for Elon to serve Neuralink, and from that market, expand into the market that we would belong to, which is, wow, look at how now you could use this to type as fast as you could think, productivity gains are increased, and everyone else would be more likely, more willing to eventually adopt something like that. Right? It's a very simple but often overlooked idea, which is, if you just simply sit there and in a pitch deck say, how many people are paralyzed, and how big is the market? It might not look as attractive. It's small compared to all the other things you could do as a business. But if it is the starting point to a larger vision, and a good investor, a good entrepreneur, our mentor should be able to spot the difference. Like, oh, this could lead to something bigger, and these folks have a problem that is far deeper, allowing you to build something that they'll definitely pick up and start a business, and from there expand out to other markets. That is an important part of classifying a good business opportunity. Okay, so that's the size of your market. This small is not a bad thing. If you have a small group that is feeling this pain more than everyone else, just small enough, not too small, but small enough, right, to basically allow you to attract something that no one else seems to want to solve. No other company thinks that's it, profitable or a big enough market for them to pursue. That's another good sign of a great entry point. Okay, the last one, and then we can start Q&A. The last one is, okay, so this is, I see this actually quite often overlooked by, you'll be surprised at the number of successful companies that exist today that continue to overlook this one, and that's fine. I mean, there are many ways to succeed, but I do think that this one, when you neglect or not think about as you're pursuing your business, and as you grow, eventually you will be at risk of competing effectively in a market. And this one is about competitive landscape and how you understand your competitive landscape. And it promised you ed tech, so I will speak very candidly about this because, and this is what makes a good competitive strategy, that you can speak about it. There's no secret. And if you just continue executing your competitive strategy and you have a good one, and your competitor or someone in the landscape is executing theirs, if they're smart, they'll execute their strategy, you'll execute yours. And while outsiders might think you're competing, you're not really competing. You're basically complementing the market. That's a good competitive strategy. So let me try to articulate this in a way that might be helpful. There's a few tools that have helped me. So let me just start listing out some of the tools, and then I'll kind of tie it together. So when you pursue anything, whether it's in education or any industry for that matter, over time, you want to start drawing a map in your head. Whether you're a military commander or you're an entrepreneur, or anyone career planning, pursuing a career in life, you should have a map. You should start drawing things on the map. What are all the opportunities that you're not pursuing? Not only the ones that you are, but the ones you might not be. Just to know where everything is located, right? And that takes time and it takes effort, just like executing. Instead of just, obviously you have to execute, you have to run. But if you don't take time to survey the land and survey what the trends are and pay attention to what's happening and understand, like, not just in your area, historically, how companies compete in their competitive landscapes. It's a good exercise to have as you grow as an entrepreneur, because you could start to see things that can create an advantage for you. And so some of these concepts will help you understand this better. So one key thing as you're building your company and as you pursue something is this analogy of a fusion chef. So when you see a problem with a unique set of customers that is a sweet market that everyone else is neglecting, and this customer base really cares about this problem, and they're very sensitive to these issues and are willing to do a lot and maybe pay extra, or if you have a basic prototype, they're willing to pay for the prototype because the problem is so important to them. When you see that, those are the things we just talked about. The third thing, when you start executing your solution, how you go about executing your solution matters. Because if you are coming up with ideas that are a fusion, taking ideas from different companies, different technologies, different industries, and mixing these ideas in a way that no one else has mixed before, you've also done the third important thing in your process, in my opinion, which is you're actually creating a competitive advantage behind the scenes. If everything you're doing in terms of your solution, the skills required to do that are no different from your competitors, then if your competitors one day turn around and say, I like what you're doing, just throw some people in a room and let's go after those guys. Yeah, that could happen very quickly. In fact, there are very famous examples of this happened during COVID. No matter, and you can get pretty far, let's say, you can get to a certain size without having to worry about this, but it usually always catches up, especially at a certain size. A great example is Slack. You might be using Slack, or you might be using Teams. So what is Slack? Like, what are the skills that the company Slack had to have inside their company to build Slack? Well, one, software engineers. What kind of software engineers? Well, the software engineers that know how to build an application on the desktop. That's a very specific technology stack. But what else? Websites. So this is a web platform as well. You can open Slack on a browser. There is an aspect of Slack that is purely communication protocols network. And so there's engineers in Slack that have those skills. Now look at all those skills and ask yourself one simple question. Who else has those skills? Microsoft. Outlook, Microsoft PowerPoint, Excel, Word, but Outlook has all the key engineers that can build a Slack. So Microsoft is sitting here watching this from far away, paying attention. And then how does Slack sell to their customers? Direct sales. Yeah, in the beginning it was organic, and eventually, they captured quite a bit of market just through the quality of the product and virality of it. So they got pretty far. But then eventually they're like, we want to get into now enterprise, big accounts. So they started doing direct sales. So what do they start doing? They start hiring sales teams, people who go and door to door and knock at these, enterprise accounts and sell directly. And who else has that model of selling? Microsoft. So who's bigger? Who has a bigger sales team? Microsoft. So when Microsoft is sitting there just thinking, like, it's not that they, couldn't build the Slack a long time ago, but there are many great companies popping up everywhere, and they're just sitting back and watching. And they're thinking, well, which one's the best opportunity for us? And they notice, oh, Slack has really, established themselves, great market, and clearly a solid market. Let's build out, let's get a bunch of guys from the Outlook team. I'm not sure where they got them, but there's no shortage of engineers that have the same skill sets. Put them in a room, build a similar product, and we have a bigger sales team. Let's just take this and give it to our customers. And boom. So now Slack is sitting here and saying, oh crap, they have a bigger sales force. And why do they have a bigger sales force? Because their sales representative can sell Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft everything. There's so many Microsoft products they can sell to a company. That sales rep has a huge army of products, which means the revenue per customer is much higher, which means they can scale their ecosystem and go to market in a way that Slack can't do. Because when a Slack sales representative knocks at the door, a Slack sales representative only has one product, Slack. So the advantage is not as there. Now, there's only one other company that is playing this game that Slack could either fear or partner with, and that's Salesforce, because Salesforce is doing exactly what Microsoft is doing. The only difference is Salesforce is selling all the cloud-based B2B applications. And so all those cloud-based B2B applications, the reason why Salesforce even had gotten to the size that it did was Microsoft didn't realize all these cloud applications was going to take off. So they were too slow and they waited. And Salesforce managed to sneak out behind and had enough time to grow to the size of roughly Microsoft, and now can compete and not worry about losing to Microsoft. So Slack had two choices: either get acquired by Microsoft or copied, or acquired by Salesforce or copied. And who knows? And you guys should just Google. If you don't know, go Google and see what happened to Slack. Where is Slack? Who owns Slack? Ask the same questions that I asked, right? How did they sell, or how would they sell to the enterprise? Why did, what are the skills you need to have to build a Slack? Does it exist inside Salesforce? Does it exist inside Microsoft? The answer is yes. So clearly Microsoft built it, and Slack had to eventually get acquired. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I'm simply saying that, one of the things you can look at, because if your only solution is to get acquired, build it quickly before someone comes, and there's only a few people can buy it, they'll have the advantage because they can actually negotiate from a place of advantage. That's not a good place to be negotiating if your plan is to get acquired. I certainly don't think about getting acquired. I have no plans to. And most importantly, you should never be in a position where you don't have a competitive advantage. So that should that opportunity show up, and should that end up being the decision we have to make, you don't want to be negotiating from a position of disadvantage anyway. And quite frankly, I'm not doing this to get acquired. I am far too passionate about this space. I care about this, and I just want to make sure that we achieve our mission. And to do that, it's your responsibility as an entrepreneur to, think about all these things, in my opinion. And so, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid that situation? Well, as you're coming up with solutions, you're thinking outside the box. You're not just thinking about the common way that entrepreneurs pursue these ideas. So I used again the fusion analogy. So let me explain what that is. So imagine you're learning to cook for the first time and you want to become a chef. So you knock the door of, let's say, a French restaurant, a French cuisine. You knock at the door and you ask to see the chef, and you say, I want to work for you. All right, let me intern. So you intern for 2 years and learn French. And then after that, you go to an Indian cuisine and you look at this Indian chef and intern for 2 years with them and learn Indian cuisine. Then you learn Chinese cuisine and you spend 2 years learning Chinese cuisine under a Chinese chef. So now you spend 6 years, 2 years in French, 2 years in Indian, 2 years in Chinese. Then you decide, okay, I'm going to come with a fusion restaurant. I'm going to build something that mixes French, Chinese, and Indian. So you spend 2 years mixing these ideas and you're like, I came up and come up with a new menu that no one has thought of. And you open a restaurant and all those 3 mentors of yours are in the same location, roughly nearby, and you start to take off. And it's a competition because you're bringing customers to your restaurant, maybe not the exact same customers, but maybe there's some overlap. So that overlap, as your market grows, they might be noticing this. They're like, oh, this young guy is now taking my customers. What is this fusion thing? So the Indian chef is looking at this and saying, okay, I'm going to try this. But he only knows Indian cuisine. That's 2 years that you spent learning his stuff. But he hasn't spent the 2 years learning Chinese. He hasn't spent the 2 years learning French. He only knows his Indian cuisine. And he certainly hasn't spent the 2 years mixing it up. So that's 6 years advantage, head start you have with this guy. And he has to want to learn. And in order for him to succeed, he has to, the probability of him effectively learning, he's an Indian chef. So the probability of him learning French, let's put 50% chance. The probability of him learning Chinese, 50%. And the probability of then him combining Indian, French, and Chinese to create fusion is 50%. In order for him to succeed, all those events have to occur. So if you know the math behind that, what is the probability of him succeeding? 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5. When you multiply those probabilities, the probability of him successfully competing with you, I don't know, it's like a really small number. I don't know it offhand. Maybe someone could put in the chat. But 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 is, when you multiply it, it's a very small number. So that is the probability of this guy competing. And that in effect is at the heart of great competitive strategy. If your core competencies, the things you do to create a new unique solution in the market, requires you to think outside the box, requires you to develop skills from other industries that your industry is not used to seeing. And you're mixing those skills from other industries into your industry. The people in your industry are like, what is this? I've never seen this before. I have no idea where is this coming from. This doesn't even make sense in my world. We don't do this stuff here. And somehow if your customers are liking it, then it's going to be very hard for the competition. Let's go back to Elon Musk. Let's go back to Tesla, right? Yes, Ford and GM have these amazing production factories, but all of the people in the engineers and the production lines are basically good at scaling the fossil fuel, ICE industry, combustion engine. That is not the same as scaling an electric car, an electric engine, electric motor. The skills are so different. And so someone who's not from the industry will look far away and say, oh my gosh, you're in trouble. GM is coming. Just like they said about Nokia is coming and Samsung, all these old flip phone companies. I forgot all the names now. We all forgot. Motorola, I guess, and all these old cell phone companies. When Apple launched the iPhone 1, they're like, you're in trouble. All these other guys are coming. Where are they? What happened to them? Because the skills to build a smartphone are not the same skills. There are skills in there that are not related to the skills that the old flip phone companies have. To build a smartphone, you have to build a computer. There are a whole bunch of skills to build a computer that cell phone companies didn't have. So how are they going to, so all these big cell phone companies, you can go back in history, look at all the news about how they were all the investors and the business people who were like, you guys are in trouble, man. All these big telco companies are coming. They're the big cell phone giants. They're going to come and get you and eat your lunch. But if you look and pay closer attention, they're very different. It was a computer in the phone, and the skills to build the computer, those skills didn't all equally exist in the cell phone companies. And so this is a very important thing. As an entrepreneur, are you looking outside your area of interest, your competitor's area of interest in terms of skill sets? Are you bringing in ideas from other industries, emerging technology? Are you introducing concepts that require a lot of skill and new learning? that allow you to come up with the solution and approach the problem in a way that your competitors and industry is not doing. That is a very important skill. I could keep going. Let me spend 2 more minutes to speak on another aspect of this. And that kind of gives you a sense of how to stay competitive in your landscape. As you basically develop these type of skills, not just on building a solution, but also how you sell that solution, how you market that solution, whether it's to consumers or to an organization, B2B sales, the way you acquire customers, if that is also a traditional method, you're in trouble. Because the way, if you're using it like a direct sales force, just like Microsoft did to Slack, you will lose. So how you acquire your customers is also very important. And if you apply a unique approach to that, you will also accelerate your competitive advantage. And, this is a hard one to explain, but as an entrepreneur in your competitive landscape, what you start to visually see is mountains and long flat land. And I use the mountains as an analogy of competitive positions. And once you identify, oh my gosh, I've identified a very unique mountain to climb on. And, we have already, started climbing this mountain, and we own a unique position in the market that others can't just chase. You should keep climbing that mountain. You may see a competitor climbing a different mountain. And, at times you may get attracted to basically chasing that competitor. And at times you may want to, climb their mountain. But, this will only make sense as you build your company. You're not going to be able to necessarily climb every part of your industry. That's impossible. And the moment you try to do that, you're going to lose. You're going to spread thin. So even as you grow and you grow your customer base, you're going to see hills and valleys and mountains form across your landscape. And you got to figure out which part of this landscape you want to own and let other competitors own theirs. And if you focus and create a strong position and you get become an expert of a certain area in that landscape, others could try and they will try. And that's, if you do it correctly, that's a sign of them executing a bad strategy. Because there are many examples in history where two companies look like they're competing. And at times, the bigger company is like, oh, or another company is like, I like what those guys are doing, let me go chase them. And when they try, because this company was climbing their own mountain, they saw an opportunity that no one else pursued, and they built a very strong product solution market, and they grew and got a sizable part of the market. Someone else will say, I want to do that. And they'll leave their mountain, they start climbing this mountain, and they basically nearly go bankrupt. So there's a great example of this in the book called Blue Ocean. There was, I think it was called Southwest Airlines. And so I'm going to say Southwest Airlines. I can't remember the exact name of the company. I think it was Southwest. And they realized that, okay, so there were airplanes, businesses were everywhere and successful, but they realized there was an opportunity for people who were traveling between the states within a country. So in the United States, if you want to travel between Florida and let's say Chicago or something, you have to take a Greyhound, or you would more likely take a bus. You consider a bus versus an airplane. So Southwest said, okay, you know what? A lot of the flights, a lot of these airlines companies, they focus on international, transcontinental, and because they're focused on that, they can't create an affordable, competitive price point for interstate travel. I think Decca Airlines is a great movie, Tamil movie that talks about a similar concept with Decca Airlines. So Southwest Airlines started to create this really interesting hub and spoke model, where they would go to tiny, small farmlands and build a cheap airport, so they don't have to spend much money. They wouldn't put food in the, they wouldn't give you meals because it's short flights, and they want to make it cheap because it has to compete with a bus ride. They had to kiosks so that you don't have to have attendance, which costs more. And so they had all these optimizations for interstate travel. So they were not competing with the big transcontinental airplanes. They were competing with the Greyhounds. And British Airways or some big airways, as the book read, said, okay, I want to do this now. That's a great business. Look at these guys, they're taking off. So they said, we're going to offer that too. But the problem was they also offer food. They also have flight attendants who, handle the white glove service, to, as you come and board the airplane. They had all these other things that added to the cost. So as they try to subsidize and serve this other market and their luxury transcontinental market, they nearly went bankrupt. And so when they have a mountain, which is transcontinental travel. Southwest Lines discovered a new mountain and optimized for that and became a large airlines company. And they knew their mountain and they stayed on it. And it was a good mountain. And they were very good at climbing their mountain. And British Airways, those guys got a little greedy, a little ignorant, didn't really appreciate all that detail, thought we're big, and they tried to chase that other one. So in my example in education, I promised an education example. I do see this. I see that in the East, Baiju is doing well. I see that Baiju has approached a very interesting strategy focused on, competitive, learning markets. So students who are very aggressively willing to take the extra time to learn and prepare for school. That makes sense for that market. I see that they're focused very much on the consumer side, the parent side, parent tutoring. And I found videos of him, many videos of him talking about, they don't want to target the schools. They feel the schools, they don't understand them. It's a very tough market for them. They don't understand all that stuff. We, on the other side, coming out from the West, we figured out, because it was hard, it was actually attractive. Because if you get that right, you have a huge competitive advantage. We've established a huge competitive advantage on the district side. We are selling in a way that no one sells. We are growing market share in a way that we have a competitive advantage in a way that no one can easily replicate, because we've combined concepts from gamification all the way to thought leadership that are not common in our industry. All the things I said to you guys, we are doing in education. And so our mountain is giving us our advantage, and we're staring at Baiju on the other side, and they're coming at it differently. And they'll obviously, if they stick to their strategy, they'll do well, which is what's happened. But if we stick to ours, we'll do well. And like that, there are likely other things in EdTech that I will not see or you will see. So we'll go into Q&A if there's time. Sorry about that, I went over. I got a note saying that it was okay if there's any questions. But again, the reason why I focused on these things and not just giving away answers is there are no easy answers. My answers will be useful here. And even then, just because I see something, you will be passionate. So it's really onto the entrepreneur to spot and use tools like this to figure out what those opportunities are and chase them. Hopefully this was helpful. Pass it back to Oprah and for Q&A.
Thank you, Travis. Participants, if you all have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or post it on the chat. We might be able to take a few questions.